this article over at Salon.com. They're all still lying about Iraq, the real story about the biggest blunder in America's history and the right wing's obsessive need to cover it up. This is by Heather Cox Richardson. And Heather makes the point. She says the road to Iraq began in 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall. That event marked the end of the Cold War. Movement conservatives refused to recognize, I'm quoting Heather here, that what they saw as weakness and incoherence, they're talking about our reaction to the dissolving of the Soviet Union, that what they saw as weakness and incoherence was an international adjustment to the realities of the same sort of multilateral world that had existed before the peculiar moment of the Cold War had divided the world between two superpowers. And, so basically, I mean, they're going back to the 1997 and the Center for, or the Statement of Principles from the group that Jeb Bush helped found, the Project for a New American Century, PNAC, and all that sort of thing. What they're missing, respectfully, what Heather is missing in this article, and I think it's probably the most underreported dimension of the Iraq invasion, was that from the worldview of Paul Wolfowitz and L. Paul Bremer, good libertarians, neocon libertarians, they believed, genuinely believed, I'm convinced, genuinely believed this Ayn Rand bullpucky, this libertarian, von Mises garbage, that if you destroy a government, if you have just a complete vacuum, governmental vacuum, the government is not an essential. Government is not essential for a society to run. An economy is essential for a country to run. This is their worldview. This is their belief. And the more you can do to get government out of the way and let the economy run things, the magic of the free market will make everything work. And so, we took down the Iraqi government, but then we didn't stop there. We sent L. Paul Bremer in, and he did this de-Baathification process. Everybody who had a job, a government job in Iraq, was a member of the Ba'ath Party. It was a socialist party, somewhat leftist. Yes, everybody got Social Security. Everybody had food allowances. There were housing allowances. You could go to college for free. There was, this was Iraq. Saddam Hussein was keeping his people happy, more or less, as long as they didn't get political on him. And as long as they didn't go al-Qaeda, because there was no al-Qaeda, there was no Sunni extremism, at least at the surface, in Iraq at the time. So L. Paul Bremer de-Baathified the country. He fired all 500,000 men in the army, in the military, all of them, permanently banned, fired the police departments, shut down the government factories, the clothing factories, the machine tool factories, the car factory. I don't know if they made cars, but whatever they made in Iraq, if it was owned by the government, they shut it down and just waited for the free market to come in. And they were so wrong. They were so wrong. They thought that destroying the government in Iraq would produce a paradise because the free market would rush in, particularly given all the natural resources Iraq has, and prove the theories of Milton Friedman and Friedrich von Mises and Ayn Rand. Prove that the billionaires are right, the Koch brothers and all these others, when they say we should just basically shrink our government, as Grover Norquist said, down to the size where you can drown it in a bathtub. They were going to prove this. This was going to be the ultimate libertarian proof. They had tried it back in the 80s down in Central America. It didn't work out so well. We ended up with death squads. They tried it back in the 60s in Chile. Didn't work out so well. We ended up with death squads. And guess what? When we took down Iraq, it didn't work out so well. So we sent John Negroponte over, who had, some would say, organized the death squads in El Salvador. And all of a sudden, and I predicted this on the air as soon as I heard that Negroponte was going to Iraq, I said, you just watch. In the next couple of weeks, you're going to start seeing corpses show up with people with their hands tied behind their back and a bullet in the back of their head. And sure enough, it started happening. But sorry, death squads don't bring democracy either. There's still lying about Iraq. Absolutely true. It is one of the biggest foreign policy blunders in the history of the United States. But what is not being told to you by the media or by anybody else is that it's all about the money. These guys, these neocons, these libertarians in the Bush administration really and truly believed that if they could prove using the country of Iraq that you can destroy a socialist government and replace it with nothing at all, that the marketplace and the billionaires would solve all problems. They really believe that. And that's why you have, Charles Murray now, the guy who wrote The Bell Curve, Jeb Bush's favorite author, coming out and saying, hey, let's just destroy the government here in the United States. We have enough billionaires now that they can run our country. And I'm telling you, these guys really believe this stuff. They think and there's some truth behind it, by the way, that it'll create a very, very stable form of government. It will. It'll be very stable for the top 1%. The middle class will go from being, roughly a third of the United States, arguably from a third to a half, depending on how you define it. We'll go from that to being maybe 10% of the United States. And the working poor will go from being about half of the United States to being about 85 or 90% of the United States. But it'll be more stable. It was more stable during the time of Charles Dickens.